Welcome to another video of my Magical Journey series, where I share the real-life experiences I've had when doing magic with multiple different systems. Today I'll share the beginning of my journey with the Archangels of the Tree of Life, how my contacts began, how I received a method to work with them, and I will conclude with some of the ritual results I've experienced. This video will go over stories with Sandalphon, Raziel, and Kamael. Technically, my journey begins learning Kabbalah with the Unfortunate and Israel Regardie's books. But although I have read those and they share the archangels, at the time I felt no inclination towards them. And to be fair, I had no idea how one could work with such beings, so I was just learning about the Kabbalah. After I spent some time exploring chaos magic, Goetia, and the Arbatel, all of which I already have video about my stories, eventually I already had a sense of how to work with entities, but even then, I was sort of building rituals and I had different rituals for different systems, and I didn't have, as I do today, an encompassing ritual to use with multiple systems, and I also didn't have a ritual specific for the archangels. So as the Tree of Life became more important in my life, I began wishing to work with these archangels, but wasn't sure how. Around then, the book Angels and Archangels by Damien Eccles came to me, and I began reading it. He provides a great catalog of entities, and I was eager to begin working with them. But he only gives invocation rituals. I wanted evocation, I wanted to have a conversation with them. Eventually, as I was reading, I began sensing that the angels would channel me a ritual to work with them. So I stopped, meditated a bit, and prayed to the angels to provide me with such ritual. That day, I channeled two separate rituals. One for working with the archangels that have sigils, and one specific for the Archangels of Kabbalah that, at least in this book, don't have a sigil. Later, I would find out that the simple name of the angel written in Hebrew is already the sigil. But I'm still glad I received separate rituals, because the ones for the Archangels of the Tree of Life were much easier. By the way, I have recently released a tutorial of this very ritual for contacting the Archangels of Kabbalah, exclusive for patrons. So if you want to have access to it and other rituals that I have shared with patrons, you can go on the description, click on the link, and support us there. Patrons also become a part of our monthly rituals for all areas of life. Our next monthly ritual, which probably will happen towards the end of September, will be a road opener with Enochian angels. And I decided to give an extra opportunity if someone wanted to do a one-time donation through PayPal or my WiseTag, both of which are in the description. And if until the day of the ritual, which let's say until the day 25 of September, if you send an amount of $8.88 or more, of course, I'll be very happy if you help with more, but at least $8.88, which is the price of the Patreon, you will be included in this month's ritual, and you can see for yourself if it's worth to later subscribe to it. Of course, my patrons also get direct access with me, and we can talk, and we can discuss ideas, and I can suggest practices or meditations or readings or whatever else. I'll be very happy if you decide to join us. If you don't, I'll still be happy if you watch this video until the end, leave a like, and leave some thoughtful comment. If you are one of my patrons, I'm deeply, deeply thankful for you. But let's get back to the stories, right? Now I already had the rituals to do, and I was eager to begin experimenting. After receiving the ritual, I soon decided to test it out, and browsing the specialties of each archangel, I decided to call Sandalphon. I began with the elemental Sandalphon, which has this sigil according to echoes. I did the whole ritual and Sandalphon manifested. I felt his presence very easily. It was intense in a way. Even though he is an angel, I felt some capacity for density within him, which makes sense given that he's associated with Malkut in the Tree of Life. But this was not Sandalphon of Malkut. This was the elemental Sandalphon. He was very straight to the point and actually somewhat rude, as if he was bothered that I was there talking with him. I thanked him for showing up and I asked him that he empowers my magic so that I may have more power over the material universe and manifesting my will through magic. That was the purpose of my ritual. He looked at me with contempt and he asked, "Don't you have enough already?" And I said that I'm indeed very happy with all the things that I have achieved, but I still seeked development, especially financially, so having more power would aid me in my journey. But he said he wouldn't do it, and that I didn't need anything from him, that I should be happy with what I have. I, of course, was a bit disappointed, and I tried to show my point a little bit, but he was firm in his denial. So my disappointment grew. I must be fair, I'm not used to entities saying no to my requests that often. It's somewhat of a rare occurrence. But I was still happy to know that the ritual actually worked and that I had just contacted a new angel. So even though I was disappointed, I was also thankful. And I said, okay, thank you for coming and thank you for showing up. I'm happy to have this contact, and I gave him the license to depart. And right before going, he said one last thing. Go call Sandalphon of Malkut, and explain to me that the same name can be shared by different angelic intelligences, or at least are different expressions of it. Since that had been a successful evocation, but a failed ritual, I immediately went to call the Kabbalistic Sandalphon. I had just done the ritual, so I didn't feel I had the need to repeat the banishing. I had just done one, like 10, 20, a few minutes prior, so I just got straight into the ritual. It is also my belief that the Archangel Sandalphon, the elemental Sandalphon, didn't do this out of spite or because of not liking me. I believe that due to my love and integration with Kabbalah, the Archangels of Kabbalah were a must in my spiritual journey, and that's what the elemental Sandalphon was guiding me towards by saying no, so that I would still have that drive to do the magic I was doing, but with an angel that was more aligned with what I am and my energy and how I reverberate. So even if I didn't end up working with him later, I still haven't, I still believe that it was crucial and very important in my journey, and I am very thankful. And very soon, I felt the angel. I welcomed the angel. I confirmed his identity under divine names and asked the very same request that I had just asked for the first Sandalphon, which was for him to empower my magic. This Sandalphon of Malkut was much sweeter and much more open. He was laughing and he had a beautiful smiling face, and he gladly accepted my request. As he accepted, in the very same moment I felt a rush of energy flowing into my being, and I was so grateful. I thanked Sandalphon and gave him the license to depart. If you've watched my Goetia episode about Vasago, you know I use a pendulum for divination. And while reading the book, I had this knowing that Raziel of Universal Wisdom, the Sphere of Hokmah, would be the perfect guide for my divination processes. Since I didn't trust Vasago anymore, it made a lot of sense to ask if he could be my partner in divination. So that was the very next archangel I decided to evoke. He, to me, shows up wearing gray gowns, and he has gray hair, and he carries a giant book that contains the entire knowledge of the whole Akashic records. He is deeply sweet, and he has a loving vibe to him, and it truly is one of the archangels that I am most close with. And that day he blessed my pendulum, and he said that he would give me the correct readings while using it under his influence. So he told me I should call him every time I were to do a divination process. Lastly, I asked him to teach me more about magic, and he said he would, but that I should be patient. So I gave him license to depart. But a few hours later, going on with my life, he showed up in my mind's eye, and he began explaining certain spiritual dynamics. He told me that diamonds and spirits are beings that, just like humans, carry an ego, have an individuality, while angels, archangels, and the Olympic spirits were fully aligned with divine will, always aware of oneness, their will always one with divine will. He went on to tell me about fallen angels, whom during the beginning stages of the emanation of the material universe lost their access to oneness, lost the expanded comprehension of how all things in manifestation are actually one. Therefore, immersed in duality, what naturally arises is a sense of individuality, so they began to have egos and became like diamonds. Which is not to say that diamonds are something bad. Diamonds just have egos, just like us. If you were to die, you become a diamond. Whatever, how much of a good person you are, you're a diamond. You can be a very nice and helpful diamond, but you're a diamond. If you have individuality, you're a diamond. Raziel told me that any diamonds, demons, spirits, elementals, or fallen angels can all have all sorts of personalities. The range of possible ways of being for them is just as vast as it is for humans, because those are the ways that an ego can be. Furthermore, he told me that angels can be hard to perceive due to how subtle they are. It requires more spiritual development to be able to perceive them, but that they always hear all of our prayers and make effort to help us. At least the ones like the Archangels of the Tree of Life, which have the divine mission of taking care and helping humanity. Not all angels will have that mission. To finish this intense session of teachings with Raziel, he told me that angels inhabit planes surpassing time, but they can't perfectly predict the future. He told me, and I already believed, that the future is probabilistic and dependent on the subjective decisions made by individuals, which are essentially a web of probabilities that can only be collapsed into a reality when observed, very similar to quantum dynamics. So the future is dependent on decisions made by the individuals. Angels can have deep insight over where our decisions can lead to, for they know all possible consequences. But reality is ever created in the now, in the eternal now. It is a dynamic process of possibilities being collapsed by consciousness observing its own actions. It was also Raziel that very early in my journey told me to study Enochian, which would only happen over a year later, but was indeed the most astounding system I've ever worked with. So my relationship with Raziel already began really great, and I can only thank him. In every one of my videos, I try to convey spiritual teachings to all of you. So at this point, I believe I should elucidate further the differences between working with archangels in relation to working with demons, although that may deserve a later video dedicated to it. But since I'm sharing this teaching that Raziel gave me, I think why not compose it with some reflections of my own. As you can already tell, the demon stories can be quite a bit more exciting due to the tension and risk involved. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that some demons attacked me throughout my journey. Working with the Archangels of Kabbalah involves way less risk. Maybe if you're a hardcore left-hand path that thinks God is horrible and that all angels are messengers of the harmful demiurge, then maybe not for you. For if you have those expectations, you probably have a lot more risk. But for the majority of people, I believe that working with the Archangels of Kabbalah is extremely safe. They will never attack you out of spite. They may not grant you your request, especially if it's not aligned with divine will, but most likely they won't retaliate. Maybe if you're doing a dense, harmful, and unjust magic to hurt innocent people, then you could suffer some repercussions, but with a pure heart, there's little risk to come from this type of magic, especially for those who know Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. By the way, I did a really good video on it, so I'll leave it at the end of this one for you to learn more about it and begin to attuning yourself with the Tree of Life to better enjoy the presence and the power of the Archangels of Kabbalah. I should also say, since not all angels have that mission to help, aid, and protect humanity, not all angels will be so friendly. There are angels whose purpose/mission does not regard humankind at all. Those probably won't be so friendly to us. When it comes to this level of safety, I'm speaking specifically about the Archangels of Kabbalah, although it also applies to the Olympic spirits of the Arbatel in my personal view. Hopefully I'll make a future video delineating more clearly the nuances between entities from different systems, but I wanted to give a little taste of it since I'm already sharing Raziel's teachings regarding the differences between diamonds and angels. Another thing I notice about the traditional Archangels of Kabbalah and the Arbatel is that they often focus on long-term goals, and it can require some more patience to see the results from that type of work. But they're also established in ways that they more easily continue through your entire life. So it's a work that may take longer, but it tends to build structures that are deeply long-lasting. So given the nature of the result we are working towards, we can choose which system to use based on their properties. Another thing that can be quite different when working with archangels is that they don't require offerings. They ask nothing for themselves. You can just do the work and they will accept or reject, but if they accept, they will work towards your goal. I know some people like to do offerings to the entities they work with, and for those people, what the angels themselves recommend is prayers to the divine, is remembrance of the divine, of the absolute God, creator and source of everything. It is giving thanks to that concept, that divine concept, which you can call it under whatever name you prefer. However you call it, they're gonna accept it. Or, if you don't wish to do that, another offering you could do to them is making donations, helping the poor, helping the people in famine, being nice to humans around you, diminishing pain, trying to alleviate pain in other people. There are all sorts of good deeds that you can do to other humans to help everyone's life and offer that action to the archangels, and they will be ultra happy with it, because what they want for you is for you to be your best possible version, and your best possible version helps people and is nice to those who are around you. Another thing you can do is your self-effort towards studying spirituality or the angels themselves, or working on yourself on smaller things like controlling certain vices or certain behaviors that you already know. Sorry, my light broke, but controlling your behaviors and vices that are not the best for you. And those would be my recommended offerings towards them. Lastly, I wanted to share a story with Kamael, the Archangel of Geburah. This was my first time working with him, and since he was an entity from Geburah, I was a little bit extra cautious. It was still the beginning of my magical journey. I wasn't used to working with all Sephiroth, so I was a bit cautious with martial and Saturnian entities. But he showed up very excited and happy, wearing armor with a medium-sized shield and a big lance. He was showing off his beautiful form and precise strikes, showing to be a proficient warrior. He explained some of the experiences I had had with Metatron and Lucifer regarding the Lamen, but I already shared that story in the video about Lucifer, so I won't go over it again. He just gave me some knowledge about some things, and as I continued to ask questions, he told me I should speak with Raziel, and proceeded to open a fend on space-time, of course in my mind's eye, put his mouth near it and scream, Raziel, while everything in my mind's eye was shaking intensely, as if his scream was shifting the entire sheave of reality. He then proceeded to tell me that he would protect me, and I continued my talks with Raziel, whom had just appeared after being called by Kamael. This ritual was just for getting to know Kamael, but I came out of it with something deeply valuable, on top of a good relationship with him, of course, which was the goal of the ritual. Raziel suggested me to visualize the earth shaking as I had seen Kamael do when I would vibrate divine names during my rituals. And I know this can seem silly, but it was this exact technique that later revolutionized my deity work and the way I use Hindu mantras, which were just a meditation tool for self-development, but after I tried it with this instruction from Raziel, I had my very first experience with Shiva, and it was one of my most beautiful experiences ever. Hopefully soon I'll share that story of my very first contact with Lord Shiva, and that was a deep surprise and one of the most blissfully exalted spiritual experiences I've ever had, right up there with my experiences with the HGA, which I have already shared in another video, so go watch that as well. Thank you very much for watching until the end. Don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and come support me on Patreon, both for Patreon or for the one-time donation to be part of our road opener collective ritual. Everything you need you can find on the description, so whatever you prefer, I will be deeply thankful for everyone helping me, as I already am deeply thankful to all of my patrons.